Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the age of quarantine. What's happening? We got Mike Berdan from Uniform with us today. All right. See, Mike's popping up right here. Boom, boom. Hello, hello.
Oh,
Michael.
my
Wow.
beautiful, beautiful friend.
Mike Berdan, everyone.
Look at
Do you
you.
see that? I got a new office chair, so I feel like very empowered. I feel
I was
amazing.
going to ask, what is that shirt?
Oh, this is a Phase Fatale shirt, actually.
Oh,
Old school.
sweet.
Yeah, you know.
Uh,
How are you, my friend?
I'm okay. I'm about to drink a seltzer. I'm going to eat some string cheese. My favorite string cheese is SpongeBob SquarePants brand.
Oh, nice. That's very Verdant. I'm in a much more liquor and weed mood, you know.
Absolutely.
My normal quarantine, age of quarantine routine.
Hey, happy
Um,
holidays.
hey, happy holidays, everyone. It's
Yep.
fucking great to see you. Mike, I'm going to start off with a question. Same question I've been asking everyone. Where are you today, and
Uh-huh.
where would have you been if you were not at home?
Oh, shit. Um, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in Bed-Stuy. I'm across the street from where you used to live.
Hmm.
We were neighbors for a while. We've been neighbors several times throughout the years.
Yeah,
Um,
we had actually.
yeah, and now we're not because now you live in New Jersey, and I understand. Um, but you have space and a beach, and your dog's happy.
Oh,
Um,
he's flying over here, man.
Yeah, my dog's cramped up in a one-bedroom apartment, and I feel bad. Um, but anyway, yeah, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in Bed-Stuy. Um, I'm hanging out, watching TV, working on tunes. Um,
Yeah.
and where would I be? I don't know. I don't think we had anything scheduled for this
Hmm.
moment. We were halfway through a tour when like the shit hit the fan, and we had to like
Mm.
cancel like a couple weeks worth of dates and stuff. Um, but that
Could
would have
you
been
talk
like,
a little bit? Could you talk a little bit about how that kind of went down and how that felt? Because I think you're the first person that I've actually spoken to that was in the middle of plans while this happened,
yeah,
as opposed to like plans about to happen.
it
How did that sort of feel?
it was weird. So we were doing the uniform body collaboration thing, right?
Hmm.
And we we met up in Portland because all those guys live out in Portland now. We met up in Portland to practice a couple of days before the tour started, and you'd started to hear about cases making their way into the states. Like um, there was a couple cases in New York, there were a couple cases in Philly, and then there was a case like right outside of Portland, and it was like we were all like kind of like making jokes about it, like, oh shit, got the Rona, oh my god, it's here. But like it didn't seem like it was going to be a big deal. And then we toured the West Coast, we get into Texas, and like all of a sudden you start hearing about like shit getting canceled and like club limitations and stuff. um and we were like, we didn't see anything. Everybody seemed fine, and like we didn't know anybody sick back home. So we're just like, this is bullshit. This is like, people are just trying to like, people are just worked up, and the government's trying to scare us, this and that, Um, but then like it was maybe like 3 days, like three shows where we were like, for like played San Antonio, and we were just like, yeah, whatever, this is fucking nothing, like it was still like a really like crowded room. And then we played in Dallas the next day, and we're like, oh well, this is maybe a little weird, like you hear more shit on the news. um, and then we played in we played in New Orleans, and by that time, like, you know, there's just an air, like, you could tell that shit was serious, and that like people were concerned, and it came down to like, you know, our booking agents and managers were all talking like we wanted to stay out because we didn't see anything, and we're like concerned about losing money, this and that, you know, and our like the people we work with were like, look, this shit's all gonna get fucking canceled on you. Like, you're gonna have the like right now you can go home on your own, but like the choice between going home and staying out is gonna be taken away from you pretty soon. And
that's kind of terrifying, right? Like when you're like, oh, I don't know if I can go home, and you're already choosing between your livelihood, and then also, can I go back to my apartment, my girlfriend, my dog, my, you know, the things that you had just like left to embark on. That in between this has to be pretty kind of jarring, right? All of a sudden, 3 days you went from it's bullshit to like, can I go home?
Yeah, to what the fuck? And then like we played one last show in Atlanta, and we were like, all right, that's it, and like got on a plane, headed home. And it was fucking, it's like the day before we were supposed to like do this big merch re-up through Holy Mountain. We ordered like fucking like $5,000 worth of merch or some shit, and like we're about to pick it up. And so like Danny had just printed like hundreds of shirts, so we just like we're missed out on these fees. We are now sitting on this giant merch bill. You know, like, what are we gonna do? And it was pretty scary. But you know, it was pretty immediate that we saw that it was the right thing to do, and we got lucky, man. Like we like kind of like put out a plea for people to like please buy like shit from the Holy Mountain store, and like they did, and you know, we wound up like paying that off with like, and then like getting a bit of extra cash like through people just buying from the store, you know,
which is an amazing thing, that to see the solidarity around musicians at a time like this is pretty incredible, right? I mean, it's the same thing, you know, with the Vitus Kickstarter and how amazing it's gone for us. So thank you guys if you know, donated. It's an amazing thing, you know, because you're looking at, you know, Mike's a musician. This is what he does, you know. So when you're out there, and it's like every tour is like rebooting the business, right? You're like investing into it, and then it's supposed to come back. And so when you can't pop up the merch store every night and you don't get those fees and everything else like that. That's a major investment that's made. So that's amazing that people. Not only were you allowed to get home in a kind of an easy enough way, and you weren't stuck anywhere, like all these different people have been around, but how, you know, people kind of got you there kind of gently through that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Must have shown you a lot, right?
Dude, people really came through for us, and you know, it made me think of all the times that like I've seen like a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe, or you know, or like you hear about like, you know, a band getting fucked or someone like, you know, in poor health, whatever. And you're like, oh, that sucks. I should throw in a couple bucks, but then you don't because you figure somebody else is going to do it. And like, oh, I don't really have the cash. You know, I work 2 days a week in a record store when I'm at home. Like all of my money like is like comes entirely from touring, you know? And so to me, I cry poverty in my head all the time, you know, because I'm always like, you know, I'm always like at my like last penny, right? Thing is, like a lot of people who are at their last pennies, fucking like, really, like showed out for us. It was like, because like, it's not like, oh, we were fucked. Everyone's fucked. So like we had all these people, like all these people were fucking losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods, like aren't sure like, you know, where they're fucking, you know, how they're going to pay rent that month. You feel like a bit of an asshole being like, can you buy a t-shirt, like, if you can? And then, like, you don't feel like a bit of an asshole. You feel like a giant asshole being like, yeah. Like, because
it's not what you want to do either, right? It's like you want to play, you want to deliver, you want to give the right experience. It comes from this weird moment.
you want to fucking work, and you should work. Like,
Yeah.
but like, you know, and like this came, like, it was like an unfortunate time. And the fact that people showed up for us over something that like wasn't essential is like, you know, it's really heartwarming. I just hope that nobody like really fucks themselves in the process, you know? Like,
For sure. I think it's a positive thing. I think, you know, everything that Bandcamp did was a positive thing.
yeah,
I think all of that is a good thing. And, you know, it is very seismic. It's hard to like not look around and you know, you kind of can't see outside of this moment in this circumstance, right?
yeah.
But I would like to try. So before I start, everyone, if you guys have questions for Mike, there's a little question box down there. You can go and you can submit your questions down there. We'll get to some of those questions a little bit later. But what we've been doing really is just going through a lot of musical history and personal history at the outset. So we're just going to start with like growing up and stuff. Where did you grow up? And what were your like kind of earliest interactions with music?
Oh, shit. Okay. I grew up outside of West Philadelphia in a town called Upper Darby, which is you know, part of you'll hear people talk about Delaware County when they're talking about Philly hardcore or whatever, and you know, it's a place where like a lot of people from that world come from, and I'm one of those people. So yeah, I grew up down there. First interactions with music, like, I don't know, I was a really awkward kid. I didn't have many friends. You know, I'm an awkward adult, and believe it or not, this is a huge improvement.
This is years of work,
dude. So yeah, you know, I didn't fucking have friends. I was like this like awkward fat kid, and I like, you know, I was like one of those early Ritalin babies, like, you know, I'm fucking like ADHD, like mom fucking throws you in a psychiatrist and puts some pills down your throat because they don't know what the fuck to do with you at a really early age. And I always just felt like fucked up and like scared. And then, you know, I would like happen upon MTV from time to time, you know. And you know,
any siblings?
I have one younger brother, and then he's like 2 years younger than me. And then I have a half sister who grew up here because my father lived up here, or lives up here. And
Gotcha.
She's like 22 years younger than me or something. She's like just a teenager now.
Got it.
But yeah, no siblings or anything. I just like watched MTV and saw like Europe and Bon Jovi videos, right?
Sick.
So like I bought like the Bon Jovi New Jersey tape, and I kind of got into that. And time went on, I couldn't identify with other kids. I didn't like myself. The only time I felt any kind of release was when I was like listening to music, you know. Other kids would get off on sports or like, you know, whatever. And I'm just like not good at that shit, and it didn't interest me. I'd hear music, I'd read books, and like I'd get some sense of identification and like some kind of escape, you know. And in 1992, Ozzy Osbourne's No More Tears came into my life, and you know, I started to like get into metal kind of like around that. And
that was a big record for me too. You know, it was like the first thing that I heard that really, and then people talking about Black Sabbath again and stuff. And my parents are from Bogota. They're not really playing that shit around the house. So yeah, I was like, oh, what's this? You know?
Yeah. I grew up in straight up like weird, like, you know, stereotypical fucking like latchkey kid, divorced mom, fucking into like Billy Joel and like Huey Lewis and the News and nothing else, you know. Like I think my dad had like a couple Rush tapes, but like he wasn't around, you know. So I start watching the Headbangers Ball, right? Like I taped every episode, and like I get into like heavier shit from that, and like that's where like, you know, I first hear Pantera, I first hear fucking Slayer. From there, like, you know, I hear Morbid Angel, I hear fucking Carcass, I hear Napalm Death, you know, whatever. And like I didn't miss an episode of the Headbangers Ball from like 6th grade in 1992 until fucking 8th grade when it ended. And like, you know, I still have all these fucking old Headbangers Ball tapes at home. And there's this segment, maybe some people will remember this. At the end of the Headbangers Ball, for like a couple months, they did this segment called Enter the Pit, where they play like their extreme music. And this is where, like, you know, yeah, it's where you'd hear fucking Morbid Angel, but it's also where you'd hear fucking like Agnostic Front, you know? And so I hear like AF and the Cro-Mags and whatnot in like these live videos on that. And I just thought of it as short-haired metal, right? And like, you know, at that point, like that was like, that's my intro to hardcore. Then I started making, you know, get into high school, and I make friends with like a couple other like weird ass fucking kids, who were also getting into the same shit, who also didn't have any friends. And we all started fucking hanging out at this weird mall and smoking cigarettes and going to diners and going to shows at this warehouse in West Philly called Stalag 13, like 5 hours.
Let me stop you right there real quick.
Yep.
So it's really interesting to me too, because I feel like at that time, that trajectory right there, you know, New York hardcore was starting to make its way, like it was starting to pop off into other realms, you know, like Madball was touring with Obituary, and like all the, you know, Sick of It All was videos now on rotation in these programs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So now at this time, you got your little crew of homies that you're like, oh, okay, now we're okay, the Free Click is together. We're doing our thing. What was like kind of the bands that kind of brought you to that DIY venue? What was the first thing you heard that was more on like that local level where you're like, let's go be a part of that?
Well, straight up, like you just hit it right there with Madball. I heard Madball for the first time on a Roadrunner comp from '94. I remember it was right before Buzz Oven on the comp. And yeah, again, I didn't know what hardcore really was at the time, but I get into high school and I meet John Sharkey from fucking Clock Cleaner, Puerto Rico Flowers, Dark Blue guy, you know, and that dickhead's still my best friend to this day. And we start like, yeah, like, you know, I get more into like kind of like New York hardcore. I get more into fucking, you know, Madball, Bulldoze, fucking Breakdown, you know, whatever. Sharky gets more into punk. Like, he's like, you know, kind of like Mr. Os Rotten. And, you know, and like, he goes deep, and like, you know, later on, like, we all explored varying intersections, because like, I don't know, the 90s were a weird time, especially like in this scene. So that's this warehouse, Stalag 13, right? You would see His Hero Is Gone there one day, and then the next day you would see fucking Plutocracy, and then the next day you'd see Morning Again, and then the next day you'd see Impaled Nazarene, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw Madball with Catch-22 a few times. Like,
right?
there was such intermingling of genres. It was just, nothing ever made sense, but you went to like all of it.
No, totally. Like, and like, that was sick, but like, it's shit that I don't think would happen now, or like, you know, something inside me says that it wouldn't happen now. Probably happens all the time now. I'm just not part of that world, or that side of that world. But yeah, you know, it was cool, but it was also kind of weird. And I'm sure you remember this because I know a lot of it was like this up here at the time too. It was violent as hell in the 90s, super fucking violent. And so you would have, like, if you booked like a crust show with like a bunch of like hardcore bands, you know, because like there are certain sonic similarities, there'd be like these like really fucked up fights, you know. I remember when Stalag 13 got shut down like the first time, like Burn the Priest, who are now Lamb of God, right? But they used to be like,
I love those Burn the Priest records.
The Burn the Priest record's fucking great. But they would play like, you know, with like Zed and like Enemy Soil and shit, typically. More kind of like crusty hardcore shit. But anyway, this one show they got booked on with like fucking like, God, I think it was like Coalesce or whatever. But like, there were a bunch of hardcore kids there, and then there was a bunch of crusty kids there, and this crazy fight happened. Somebody like, there was like a crust dude outside with a fucking dog who was mouthing off at somebody else, and this guy just reached inside his bag, pulled out a gun, and shot the dog, you know? And
what the fuck? Shot the dog? Take the crusty out first.
Yeah.
Christ.
Yes, they killed the dog. And like, that was like the kind of shit that like, I mean, like, it's a wild story, but like, I got a million of them, you know, like shit like that wasn't that weird, you know?
I think that also, you know, especially now, I think for some of the
Dillinger Coalesce, yeah, right, yeah, okay, that was the shit,
yeah. So they know.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, I think that there's like, you know, nowadays all these different genres sort of intermingle and hang out harmoniously and all this stuff. But there was real lines drawn in the sand and real like palpable cultural difference. Like I went to a hardcore show and I looked one way, or you did, and you were like, I gotta like watch what line I'm kind of riding here, you know. And some of those mixed bills would create fireworks, like you would say. And so I definitely saw some of the same kind of stuff, and I feel like, you know, there's plenty of stories of, you know, more like skinheady hardcore bands and like long hair metal bands really getting into it. So yeah, it was definitely a wild time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of my first shows ever. Let's just talk about Madball again. Madball
the Kings.
Madball played Speakeasy Cafe in Upper Darby, right? And there was Boston FSU at the time, and there were a group of kids in Philly who started calling themselves FSU, and Boston FSU didn't like that. This was before, like, you know, the big crew mash, whatever. Boston FSU came down, beat up Philly FSU, and I saw some dude fucking get cut with a box cutter, you know, at like one of my first shows. Like, it's like,
yeah, it was not what it is today for sure, and it was definitely some heavy handed stuff. But this was an extreme culture. Like, you had to be ready to get in, like, to just sort of confront that and be a part of that. And yeah, it wasn't for the faint of heart. I mean, for me, oftentimes as well, I'm like, you know, this is just sort of put my face, and I was like, hey, you know, yeah, I'm from New York and stuff like that, but I'm from the fucking suburbs, man. I'm like, I'm not cut from the same cloth that Freddie and Hoya are, you know. But what was interesting is that at a certain point, I started discovering other music that was kind of different shades of hardcore and stuff like that, where I'm like, you know what, I think maybe I can do that. Maybe I can participate in that way. Like, I can never be Freddie, but maybe I could be some approximation of something else. When was the first time that you kind of felt that? You're like, you know what, maybe I can factor into this by doing it myself with my friends. When did you kind of think, hey, I can do that?
Man, I always wanted to. And you know, I'm the same way in a lot of ways. Like, I couldn't fight. You know, I was like the kind of person who
I was like 120 pounds.
Yeah, I hung out with. I made sure that I was cool with people who could fight, because otherwise I was gonna get beat up. And so that, like, you know, that was that. Is like, you know, but like be in with the bad kids, but like don't be the bad kid. At least not at that point. But I always wanted to play music. You know, I started playing guitar in like 8th grade, and I was terrible at it. You know, I can't make my hand and my head do the same thing at the same time. And so I started trying to sing for bands, trying to convince people to let me sing for their bands. You know, I think like sophomore year in high school, I like managed to like start my first band with some friends, and we were called Standstill, and it was that.
Ooh, that's kind of a nice name.
Yeah, right. It was at the point in time in the 90s where all these bands had 2 singers, and like, you know, this band had 2 singers, and
the Code 7 model.
Yeah. Oh, dude. The all spelled model.
True.
Yeah. Back then. But yeah, man, we were fucking horrible, and you know, we broke up relatively quickly, and from that point on, like, all right, so like, I partied a lot when I was a little kid, you know, like, and by party I mean like did a lot of drugs by myself, but I did that until I was like 15 or so, right? And then I stopped. And when that band broke up, I was never straight edge. I always smoked cigarettes and shit. But when that band broke up, I decided like, hey, I'm going to smoke weed, right? And so I smoked weed one day. And then like a week later, I was at a Dystopia show, and I was like, you know what? I can drink. And so like I decided that I was going to drink that night, right? And I wound up missing Dystopia because I was at like the weird bar across the street. But I was like, yeah, you know, I got this. Anyway, I'm telling you this because like I pretty quickly became like not very functional, you know? And so I would try to start bands, but like I was like too fucked up, and like nobody would take me seriously. I didn't take myself seriously. I didn't believe I didn't believe I could do anything, but I'd always try. It sucked. It was a really long, depressing time. And it wasn't until like 2006, 2007, I started a band. I'd moved to New York a few years beforehand, kind of in a haze, trying to get clean, and it didn't work. But
moving to New York for that is kind of a
it worked for like a month, but like then not so much. But I started this band called Drunk Driver because it was like at that point in time it was like nihilistic days in New York, where like kind of like the more fucked up you were, the better off you were. And you know,
I think that people also have to see that landscape, right? Like over here in New York City, there was just, you know, there were maybe like in northern Brooklyn, maybe like 5 to 6, maybe like actual real bars. And then everything else are just like illegal parties, warehouses, other things like that. Everything from like, you know, the Yeah playing in like a loft somewhere to like hardcore shows at Crouton's House of God, like all these different warehouses and stuff. So it was pretty Wild West in Brooklyn at that time too. And that's really how the scene felt. Like you just go into different shows all over the fucking place, and wild shit would happen.
It was a blast, man. You know, I was just like, you know, I would just get loaded and like basically pick fights with myself mainly. It was like, oh, cool. Like the whole thing with this band was like, our guitar player was awesome. Our drummer was a piece of shit, but he was real good. And I just like punched myself, you know, and like it was enough for quite a while. And you know, like we developed a bit of a following and shit, and like after a while, like things started to get real dark with that band in a lot of different ways. Like, you know, Our drummer got called out for assault. And that's like a whole thing. And like, you know, it was why we broke up, kind of like in a really big way. And like shortly before that time, I was like, you know, I need to fucking get clean. And I was having a really hard time with that.
I remember seeing Drunk Driver and Primitive Weapons, my old band, played a show with you guys. And I'd seen you guys at different moments, but it was just such a wildly unpredictable hardcore band. And I really enjoyed it because I was like, I'm here for the sideshow, like see what the fuck's going to happen. But it felt very immediate and it felt really real. And then when I saw that, you know, I'd flamed out and those things had happened, I was just really curious to see what might become of these folks. I'm like, everything seemed like it was always teetering on the edge of falling apart anyway at any given time, you know? So
yeah, on a good day, it was about to fall apart.
Yeah, exactly. The music felt like that. You're like, oh my God, are they going to make the next drum hit or the next, you know? And that's what gave it the energy. And I really loved that band, but it felt like a bottle rocket. It didn't feel like something that would sustain.
Yeah, it was really weird. And like, there's no way that band could have lasted for like, you know, a number of reasons. And like me and the guitar player, Christy, are still friends. And she's like a mom with 3 kids and like a fucking like a husband and like a like fucking super serious job, you know. Like she couldn't live that kind of life that she has now doing that. And like I couldn't live the kind of life that I have now, like doing that. Like I, you know, pay rent now and like I haven't slept on
Who's doing that anymore?
What's up?
I said, who's doing that anymore?
I don't fucking know. Dude,
yeah.
I got lucky, and like I don't know if there's any musicians listening to this. I managed to score the Music Cares program run by the Grammys of all fucking things. We're doing grants for musicians who are affected by COVID, and like. They do Music Cares does a lot of crazy work. Like they put a lot of friends of mine through rehab. They help with like health insurance, health expenses a lot, you know, and not just for people who are like fucking big, like they do it for like, you know, just for people who make music. And they do it for people who are fucking down and out. But anyway, I got a grant from Music Cares to pay my rent for this coming month.
Well,
know?
hey,
and like a bunch of other people did too.
Let's give it up for that. That's cool.
Yeah, and like that's the kind of like, I mean, that's the kind of shit that is like truly heartening about like not just even our immediate community, but like just like the artistic world in general under this umbrella of like, hey, I don't care what you make or how you make it, but like you're a suffering artist, or you're an artist who's hard up, you're an artist who is unable to work, you're an artist who doesn't have health insurance, you're an artist who is strung out, you're an artist who is like it is in like a fucked up place, and there are organizations that will help, and like it might sound corny, but like, dude, there's been points in my life where like I've needed help getting into rehab. I've needed help like going to see a doctor, you know? And
yeah. And I'm sure like after Drunk Driver ended, there were, you know, you just said you were making some big decisions, some changes. It seemed like were starting to come your way, you know? And if you could have had these resources back then, who knows how much more quickly or better that could have happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't look back. I regret a ton of shit, like, across the board, right? Like, anybody who doesn't ever, like, if you say, like, oh, I live my life without regrets, I don't regret anything, you're a fucking asshole. Like, I regret all kinds of shit. I regret shit from earlier today. I regret shit from fucking 40 years ago. Doesn't matter. But, like, even the shit that I regret brought me to where I am now. And where I am now feels like a pretty like okay place, you know?
Sure,
And so,
sure.
and I'm grateful for that, you know? And like,
Yeah, of
you know,
course.
like I've had my fucking scrapes, and if it wasn't for that, then I wouldn't have like certain reference points that like, honestly, like I need to pull from in order to make shit, you know? Like,
Sure, sure. And I think that that's interesting. It's like, you know, this is a continual process, right? It's not anything that goes away. It's, you know, it's this continual process of kind of just self-awareness and being where you want to be and how you want to be. So when you
yeah,
started coming out of like the drunk driver sort of vibe, and then you know the next group was quite different, Believer Law and stuff.
yeah.
Where did the kind of you know more of a synth-driven group and everything like that? Where did the you know kind of the start the ideas for that come from? From coming from you know much more like the hardcore, blown out hardcore kind of world.
Yeah. I don't like,
Rika,
I think, oh shit. Hi,
had to give a
Rika.
just had to give a shout
Um,
out to Queen Reef.
yeah. Um, but, yeah, what's it called? So I've been into like kind of like rivet head industrial shit and like synth pop for a long time. Cause like in the late 90s, I dated this woman who was like really involved in that scene. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have gotten into electronic music. So like, credit to Nina Shin if she's watching this. But but anyway, I'd always wanted to do something like that. Didn't really know how to, and like 2009 or so, I started playing in this group called Puerto Rico Flowers, um, and it was just like it was my buddy Sharky's solo project. We put this band together, and it was, you know, I played a microKORG, whatever, and you know, that kind of got me going, thinking that like, yeah, you know, maybe I could do something like this. And so, Drunk Driver broke up. I then did this hardcore band with like Mark McCoy and some other people called
Yes.
Veins, and that was just
Veins,
like
yes.
a straight hardcore project, and that was a blast, you know. And we only made like 1 7-inch or so and played a few shows, but like it was great. And then I started Believer Law with my buddy Eric at around the same time, and I knew Eric through he played in this band Planned Collapse, and he did this project called Skin Drink with me and Sean Reagan. That was like, you know, like industrial fucking crash worship type thing, and you know, and it was fun. I knew Eric was like a good synth player. I wanted to like make some beats, and you know, it was just the two of us for a while, and then, you know, with then Sean, Sean Reagan, Cult of Youth, Sean, um, he recorded us and joined the band in the process, and it was fun. Some shit kind of went down, like that kind of caused that to end a little. I'm not even gonna say prematurely, but like it needed to end, and like it is what it is. Um, but
So now for counting at home, that's two kind of abrupt, kind of fucked up endings for Mike Berdan's first two musical projects. This sometimes isn't always the easiest thing to going. It's not zero to uniform, right? We have to always, you know, try and fail and explore different sounds and do
yeah,
different things and all of that to kind of get where we're at now, right?
totally. And for what it's worth, it's like I learned my lessons the hard way. You know, I always have. And when it came to Drunk Driver, like, yeah, it was painful the way that shit broke up, but like, I knew what I was getting myself into. You know, I signed up for that. And like,
Yeah.
like, I'm not gonna say like, you know, oh, woe is me, fucking people did me dirty. You know, it's like, nah, man, I fucking played in a band with a super sketchy asshole, and like, I should have known better. And like, I wasn't a fucking angel at the time either, you know? It's like you, like, take your lumps, like, learn your lesson. And, like, with Believer Law, you know, it was, like, a little different, but, like, there, like, you know, there were some elements surrounding that band that, like, shit that, like, I was not fucking comfortable with. And, like, I tried to, like, be like, oh, it's not really that bad. Oh, it's cool. And it's like, it wasn't. And, like, you know, when the point in time came that, like, you know, people were like, yo, why are you fucking letting these elements around you? I didn't have a fucking answer for that. And it was like, oh, because it's like industrial music. It's like dark, you know, like whatever. Like, oh, like these people can't really be like politically dubious, you know, whatever. And like, fact is, like, there were fucking like straight up Nazis who were at some of these shows. And it's like, I can't fuck with that, you know? And that's on me for like letting some of those elements be anywhere fucking near me, you know? And
yeah,
so,
I mean, I think it's an interesting time and distinction, and it's a hard thing to necessarily always navigate. But then when you hit that point for yourself, you decide to do what you needed to do. So and for yourself, and to kind of move forward also artistically, because maybe at that time too, it's like, you know what, I can't have this energy around me while I'm also trying to create and I'm trying to move forward, right? So with that kind of in mind, with Uniform,
yeah,
what was the beginnings of Uniform, and why did you want to get with Ben and to be like, hey, this is what we want to do, you know? Like, what was it like? Okay, third time's a charm. We're gonna start Uniform, and this is gonna be something that I'm with.
Oh, dude, Uniform. That whole thing is weird. All right, so when Ben recorded all the Drunk Driver stuff, right? And when Drunk Driver broke up, like, we had a big falling out, like real fucking big falling out, and we didn't talk for years. And so Believer Law was breaking up, and I was just like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I'm not fucking playing music, you know, like, whatever. And I ran into Ben one day, and, like, we just started talking. And he was playing in the Men at the time. And, like, we were like, hey, like, you want to, like, go get dinner one of these days? And, like, yeah, cool. So we, like, met up at this burger joint, Mother's, on Graham Avenue up the street from where we all used to live.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. And, like, we just got to talking about, like, shit from, like, you know, like, those kind of, like, latter aughts years, and, like, you know, like, kind of where we had, like, developed emotionally, and, like, you know, the shit that, like, we didn't want to do anymore, like, the kind of shit that we didn't want to deal with anymore, out of ourselves and out of others, you know? And we're like, all right, like, well, I still want to fucking play aggressive music. And Ben wasn't doing aggressive stuff at the time. He's like, I want to play aggressive music. And so we're like, yeah, let's just see if we can hang out and, like, program some beats, because we don't want to deal with a fucking drummer, and come up with some riffs and do what's what. And you know, we hacked at it for a few months. Then we booked a show at Nothing Changes. Fucking our girl Nikki.
I was there.
Yep.
I was there. I DJ'd that show.
Yo, we were so bad.
Do you know what? Want to know what I remember from that show? As a quick little aside. Yeah, dude, I'm sitting there and I'm watching the show from the DJ booth, and Ben had brought like 22 amps, or I don't know how many. He brought so many amps, and you guys are playing, and it was great. I loved it. First of all, I can't say enough about Ben Greenberg as a person. I really have always liked him. I thought he was extraordinarily talented, too handsome, a great producer. It's just like, you're disgusting, but I love you. Yeah. But he's great, and he's a great guitar player. And so I was very curious to see what you guys were going to do, and I was really happy that Nikki asked me to DJ. But so if you can imagine, it was Mike and Ben on a stage that's about the size of this, and like 20 amplifiers, and and they're going, and the show's going great. I think, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
of course.
down with this shit. I'm down. I'm like, okay, I got somebody to open up some cool shows now. Let's go. And one of their amps fell over and caught fire, and I
Yep.
actually liked it even more. So that's my first memory of Uniform, and I'm really happy I have it.
That was the first live Uniform experience. I think that we played for like maybe 5 minutes. Um, and
It
like,
was short.
dude, it was bad. And our next few shows were like that. Like, we played fucking, you booked us at Vitus. We played with like, fucking, I don't know, White Lung or some shit.
Yeah, I
And
think so.
we shorted out the stage in 5 minutes. Um,
Yeah, that was
and
bad.
like, had to
I was
fucking,
like, don't be mad at them.
yeah. Oh, dude, I mean, thing is, like, we were trying to just, we were using kind of volume as a gimmick. Like, check out how fucking loud we are. Check out, we brought our own fucking PA. And it only worked so much. And so, when we started just like kind of like going direct through club systems and saying like, let's leave this behind. Um, only at that point were we able to like, get through songs. And now it's not a problem because now we play kind of with a full band, and so we're not overloading shit the way that we used to. And I'd like to think that after this many years and like this much, like this many shows, we kind of know what we're doing. Like we don't like know what we're doing, but we like kind of know what we're doing.
But you're kind of driving down a lane, and what I thought was cool about seeing even that first show, it wasn't really about like execution or anything. I oftentimes when I'm like seeing like young artists, and I'm talking about like not young, like I know Ben, I booked the Men, I booked Pygmy Shoes, I booked all of Ben's bands. I played with your band, so like I know who you are, but this is a young project. It's like a newer thing. But I'm
By a
like
bunch of
looking for
women.
that. Yeah, I'm looking for that like statement of intent almost. And I was like, oh, okay, if this is like, okay, we're driving down this way. I didn't feel like a lot of people were playing a more guitar-driven industrial thing at that time with live vocals. Like it didn't seem like
Mm.
that's where, there were maybe other folks who were approximating these things, but not too many. And so it was cool to see it just continue to evolve as you guys
Yeah.
continued to play more and more. When you guys, started kind of fleshing out the sound more and more, when did it kind of come to the point where you're like, you know what, we're going to make the decision. We're going to go get a drummer. When did that kind of come into play where you were like, you know what, I think that we need it now?
It was weird. It, um, we kind of had it in our heads that we wanted every record to be completely different from the last. Um, and so we made the Perfect World record, and it was like really kind of like slapdash made on like a really simple drum machine, and like an Arturia Mini Brute with a guitar on like over a laptop, and we put it together in a couple weeks. Like, and by a couple weeks, I mean like we'd get together for like an hour or two or three times, and like that was the record. And it worked out pretty well. Then with Wake and Fright, we wanted to do like this kind of like grandiose sound design thing. And so we spent a year putting that together, and like pretty meticulous about it. Like every Wednesday, I'd go over to Ben's place and we'd spend like 8 hours, and then in our off time, when we weren't doing that, when I wasn't at my day job, we were editing. And so that record was just like this really intensive labor. And for the next one, we decided that we wanted the inverse of that. We wanted like an actual like raw band. And so we wrote these demos, Ben wrote these demos that were kind of based around Mayhem's Death Crush. And we asked Sean McGinnis from Piss Jeans if he wanted to play drums. And he said yes. And so we booked some studio time. The day of the studio, the day we're supposed to go and record, Sean calls up and he's like, yo, I have food poisoning. And so we're like,
I never knew that.
Oh, dude, it was like, what the fuck do we do? Greg Fox just so happened to be in town. And so called up Greg and he's like, Ben called up Greg and he's like, yo, would you be into this? And Greg's like, yeah, sure. And so
guys, for everybody to listen to home who doesn't know, who might not know who Greg Fox is or whatever, he drummed in Liturgy and Ben Frost, and he's played with Swans, and this is like saying like Ginger Baker sitting over there on the shelf and like, you know, cracking case of emergency, and here comes Greg Fox, the Jewish hammer, to fucking play with Uniform, which is unbelievable. I had no idea that that's how it happened.
I mean, he's a remarkable human being, and he's one of the best musicians that I've ever worked with, and it was fucking crazy that wound up happening. And so yeah, we made, like, he made that record basically having not heard any of the demos or barely heard any of the demos. And like, crushed, like, he did like this, he did a really great job. And he was gonna join full time, but then like some touring commitments kind of got in the way. We needed to be out a lot longer than he was going to be able to be out. And so we did this tour with Death Heaven and Drab Majesty, and Mike Sharp from Impalers signed on to fill in for Greg during that time. And we wound up just like, Sharp wanted to really tour, and we just gelled with him like fucking crazy. And so Sharp's been playing drums with us ever since. You know, Sharp has a kid now, and he lives in Austin, Texas. So he hasn't been able to tour as much lately, but we've gotten pretty lucky. Blaze from Bambara played drums with us in Europe. This guy, Mike Engel, who does this solo doom project called Crawl, which is like, you know, pretty remarkable for one fucking dude. He played drums for us on that Boris tour, and like, yeah, we've been lucky. Fucking, even like Igor Cavalera sat in on drums for us on one show for one song or two songs at a show in London a couple of years back. And
amazing.
Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah, totally.
So,
that's a dream come true kind of status right there. Yeah, that's great. I definitely feel that. So we got about 5 minutes or so left. This thing kicks you off after an hour. So just to kind of let you know and stuff. So guys, I just want to thank you guys for joining me and Mike, and, you know, follow Saint Vitus, follow Uniform NYC, you know, just, you know, stick around One Man's exploits and all that sort of stuff. So I just want to talk really quickly about, you know, the last release. You did the collaboration with The Body. How did that kind of come about and stuff like that? I mean, those guys love kind of pulling a lot of people into their sphere. So how did that kind of work out? I'm barely sure. So we toured together in Europe a few years ago, and we got along really well. But Lee doesn't fly. Lee, the drummer, doesn't fly, and so they use Zach Jones from MSC and Brave Young, who was playing drums for them on that tour. And we just got along. But before that, actually, you booked us together at Saint Vitus. And yeah, you. And me and Lee kind of just started talking there. And so somehow we started like texting each other a bunch, and like we just became like text friends.
and I don't know. It's like one of those things. Like like one day like we didn't know each other at all, and the next day like we were all like really good friends. And so we did the first collab, you know, a couple of years back, and like we did that all. We like wrote and recorded the whole thing in a day, up at Machines with Magnets. And then this last one, like, you know, we took more time with it, and we did it before, not the tour that got cut short this last time, but the tour in 2019. Or was it 2008? I don't even know what fucking year it is anymore. You know, making those records and doing those tours is kind of like just an excuse for us to hang out. Like we like being around each other. We like goofing off, you know. We have really similar politics. We have really similar outlooks. And it's just like, it's nice being around a bunch of people who are over the age of 40, who have a similar worldview. Yeah, man, like, I'm so like truly blessed that like I get to like my job is like I travel around and I goof off with my friends and I hit a bunch of buttons and I yell, you know, like,
yeah, hey,
stuff, you know, like,
not bad, not bad.
Like I might complain about like, you know, having to get sent home from a tour early and like, you know, not knowing like when like you know where our next paycheck's gonna come from, but like I wouldn't have it any other way, you know. Like,
yeah,
smokes.
The experiences, the people you meet, the connections you make across like this whole kind of pretty amazing landscape, and it's amazing. Like we were saying earlier in the interview, right? Like you guys were about to set sail. You had this cut really short, and people came up for you, and it's a pretty amazing thing. I think we've really seen how much people want and support and like need music in their lives too. So I love seeing that really, you know, unfold in maybe like less common ways, you know, because of the situation that we find ourselves in. So we're just going to wrap up. Mike, I just want to thank you again for coming on and hanging out with us on the age of quarantine. Check out my boy, Chris Enriquez. He'll be live tomorrow with Marissa Nadler, who's a fucking genius. And yeah, man, the last question we ask real quick, 5 records for the quarantine. You got plenty behind you. What would you pick?
Oh shit. Okay. I actually had to do this for a radio show, so I'm ready. Okay.
You're ready. Good. We got 2 minutes.
Blood. Okay. So, all right. Von, Satanic Blood, Agnostic Front, Victim in Pain, Crossed Out 90 through 93, White House Cruise, and let's see here, Amoebics Arise.
Wow. Beautiful. 5 for 5. It's beautiful. So if you guys are interested, a couple of things that Mike's been listening to for a long time and have influenced all sorts of things. Listen to all of his bands. It's great. And also, your solo project, could you just name it for us real quick before you go?
Canal Street Electronics.
If you guys are into some cool, kind of noisy, minimalist, industrial, cool shit that Mike's also putting together on his own, in that very room, listen to Canal Street. Listen to Canal Street Electronics. Mike, it's fucking great seeing you, and I can't wait till I see you in Brooklyn soon, all right?
Can't wait.
Much love.
Be well out there. Be well. Tell Marissa and Angus that I love them, and yeah. Okay.
Likewise.
Thank you all for fucking tuning in, man. Hell yeah, this is great.
Thank you, guys. Later.
Later.
Ciao.